Have you ever seen a hot-tempered man? He carried 2 barrels of gasoline and stood in front of a company building, ready to burn it down. 2 security guards thought he was a lunatic and told him to leave immediately. If he didn't leave within 3 seconds, they said they would take action.
1, 2, 3.
The man even counted for them. He quickly knocked the guards down and dismantled their guns. Then he carried the gasoline barrels straight into the lobby. This was a scam company, one that specialized in deceiving retirees and ordinary people out of their savings. His neighbor was also one of the victims. After retiring, Clay rented a warehouse here and became a beekeeper. His landlord was a kind retired teacher, Mrs. Parker. She often invited him to her home for meals. Her tolerance and care made him feel the warmth of a family. But unexpectedly, one day while checking her bills, a warning popped up on her computer saying the system was infected with a virus. Worried about losing her data, she hurriedly followed the prompt and made the phone call. The person who answered was the manager of a scam company. It turned out that this tech company, called United Data, specifically targeted elderly people who lived alone. Through remote access, they saw that her account contained $2 million. Under the manager's guidance, she downloaded the antivirus software they sent her. After entering the password, the computer screen went black, and the money in her account was transferred away. The company celebrated a victory. When the screen lit up again, the account balance was zero. All her savings, along with the children's charity fund she managed, more than $2 million, were gone. She could not bear the blow. That night, as usual, Clay brought honey to her house. The alarm inside the house immediately put him on alert. He cautiously checked the place and found a handgun on the floor while Mrs. Parker was already gone. At that moment, a woman pointed a gun at him. She was Mrs. Parker's daughter, an FBI agent. After discovering her mother's death, she believed Clay was the suspect. Clay tried to explain, but Verona had no mood to listen. She only wanted to take him to the police station. Later, she checked her mother's computer and found the account balance was zero. She instantly understood what had happened. At this point, Clay was cleared of suspicion and sent back. Her mother's death was confirmed as a suicide. Verona realized she had misunderstood him and invited him to her home to talk about her mother's situation before her death. During the conversation, Clay learned the truth. It was a scam company that had transferred all her money away. That was what caused her to collapse under the shock and end her own life. This scam company had already deceived many people, and every time suspects were caught, they escaped conviction due to insufficient evidence. As a result, the fraud had spread worldwide. After learning the company's name, Clay suppressed his anger and left with that jar of honey. He opened the beehive and took out a satellite phone from inside, asking someone to help locate the scam company's address. Then he went to eliminate this social cancer. He slammed the 2 barrels of gasoline onto the table. While the employees were still working actively, he told everyone to stop, but they laughed at him. He had no choice but to use force to show them he was serious.
Repeat after me. I will never steal from the weak and the vulnerable again.
Seeing everyone cooperate, he kindly reminded them to leave. He poured gasoline all over the place. Everyone else fled in panic. At this moment, the manager arrived with security guards to drive him away and told Clay that this was a business worth millions of dollars every day. He warned him not to play the role of a foolish hero. This instantly enraged Clay. The guards rushed at him, but they were not on the same level at all. He easily knocked them down. Seeing how cowardly the manager was, Clay felt he wasn't even worth hitting. He turned around and placed the gasoline barrels onto the circuit board. If any victim called in, the place would be detonated. The manager had no choice but to flee for his life. At that moment, another victim's computer showed an error, and they dialed the scam hotline. In an instant, the building was reduced to ruins. The manager was also terrified and had no idea who the man really was. He reported the situation to his boss. The boss told him to investigate using the most recent transaction records. When they traced the victim of the $2 million loss, they happened to spot the pickup truck. They followed it closely. Clay returned to the warehouse. He turned on the machinery because he knew they were coming. The other side had no idea the danger was approaching. They entered with weapons, recklessly searching for him. The manager was still shouting arrogantly, thinking he was hunting prey, not realizing he had already fallen into a hunter's trap. Clay took down one assassin, then dealt with another. He easily knocked out 3 men. The manager panicked and fired wildly. With his nerves stretched to the limit, Clay suddenly appeared behind him. A machine instantly sliced off the manager's fingers. Clay left him in the warehouse and walked away. As he left, he directly set the warehouse on fire. At the same time, Verona was still investigating the burned building when she received news that her mother's warehouse had been set on fire. Meanwhile, the manager escaped and reported back to his boss. After learning how bad the situation was, the boss became furious. Suddenly, Clay appeared, dragged him out, tied him up, and secured him to a vehicle. The manager kept begging for mercy, but Clay had already made up his mind to clean up this trash. The person on the other end of the phone still didn't know what was happening here. Clay finally spoke directly with this mysterious man who also became the next target. Although he acted arrogant on the phone, he was clearly frightened. He sought help from a security consultant, Weston, a former high-ranking CIA official before retirement. When Weston learned it involved the Beekeepers organization, he was afraid as well because they were elite figures in the industry. He did not want to get involved. However, Drake's mother called Weston. Before long, he agreed. He had no choice but to use his connections to gather information. He contacted a current executive who had once been his subordinate. When she learned the investigation involved the Beekeepers, she also expressed concern. But the investigation was completed quickly. They discovered that the person they had offended, Clay, was a retired beekeeper, and the current beekeepers were willing to assist. Only then did Weston finally feel some relief. At this moment, Clay was still reminiscing about the past, holding the jar of honey and lost in memory. Suddenly, a pickup truck rammed into him. A female assassin got out of the vehicle holding a modified high-power rifle and opened fire on Clay's car. Her weapon could fire hundreds of rounds in succession and was equipped with a scope. With such advanced equipment, she was the current beekeeper. Clay finally revealed himself and confronted her head-on. The two beekeepers looked down on each other, but it was obvious she was no match for Clay. He kicked her to the ground. As she got up and pulled out a handgun, Clay disappeared again like a shadow. This enraged her. She lifted the pickup truck's cover, revealing a powerful mounted weapon, a 6-barrel machine gun. She fired wildly in all directions, eager to turn Clay into a honeycomb. Meanwhile, Clay took out the jar of honey and threw it at her, knocking her unconscious behind the pickup. He then lit a lighter and tossed it at the truck. Without looking back, he walked away and even borrowed a car from a passerby. Meanwhile, Weston received a call from the intelligence director. The mission had failed. The Hive division would no longer participate. Weston now had no choice but to find another solution. On the other side, Clay continued with his plan. He used the female assassin's finger to open the Hive's access door. After entering, he checked the recent communication records. He found out who had sent her and traced the final location. His next stop would be the scam company's headquarters. Weston then organized a Delta unit along with other mercenaries. Agent Verona also uncovered information about the scam company and believed Clay's next target was the Boston branch. Indeed, this headquarters was even larger than the one that had been destroyed before, and the employees there were even more reckless. Weston deployed special forces to protect the building. The team leader wanted the employees to leave their posts, but the person in charge ignored them completely and reported directly to Drake, who then drove the special forces away. The staff even applauded as the soldiers left. At that moment, Clay was already in the crowd. He suddenly threw someone aside. The soldiers opened fire wildly with their rifles. Clay took cover behind computers and rushed out of the lobby, with everyone chasing closely behind. Clay triggered an alarm and hid around a corner. When the team leader approached, Clay seized control of his weapon, and all the bullets hit the teammate's body armor. He didn't want to fight him directly, but the leader pulled out a battle axe and continued the fight. Clay grabbed a fire extinguisher and knocked him down immediately. Clay returned to the scam company and captured the manager, beating him severely. In the end, he forced him to reveal the mastermind, Drake. When Drake's photo appeared, everyone recognized him. The current president was his mother. That was why he acted without restraint. Further investigation into the money flow revealed connections to the intelligence agencies and links to the sitting president as well. Even Weston's elite team failed to stop Clay. Drake had no choice but to hide at his mother's seaside estate. This was the final safe haven, heavily guarded with armed tactical police inside and out. Verona, as an FBI agent, was responsible for security. Weston also hired another group of mercenaries. Their leader was said to be the only man. who had ever killed a beekeeper, though he himself had paid a heavy price. A helicopter landed at the estate, and the female president arrived in person, but she seemed unaware of what was really happening.
When the f are you going to tell me what's going on, Wallace?
Guards were everywhere around the estate. To prevent Clay from sneaking in, they even welded shut all the manholes. But unexpectedly, Clay emerged from the one manhole that hadn't been sealed, hiding beneath a cargo truck. When the guards inspected the vehicle, he strangled one man unconscious from underneath, changed into his clothes, and blended into the estate. He then changed into a suit and casually walked into the party, deliberately exposing himself to Verona.
It's in the building, East Wing. Give me everything you got.
Break! Packages in the ass!
The mercenary leader spotted Clay in the crowd and immediately surrounded him. They captured him easily and forced him to kneel. The leader acted arrogantly and raised his gun to execute him, but the agent stopped him, saying Clay should be taken in for questioning. However, Weston's look signaled him to shoot. But Clay had already prepared everything. An explosion rang out. He instantly seized the gun and killed the leader, then rushed inside the building. At this time, the female president had already learned of her son's crimes, and Drake admitted everything.
I taught CIA software to hunt money and not terrorists.
She panicked, but still insisted on upholding justice.
Then I'm telling the entire nation, and if it costs me everything?
Clay broke into the room, knocking down the tactical officers one by one, subduing everyone without taking their lives. Finally, he reached Drake's door. Weston stood in front of it, trying to persuade him to stop. Clay stated that this was personal, and that he was also seeking justice for everyone. When Weston tried to block him again, Clay threw him aside. With a loud blast, the door was blown open. Clay finally faced the mastermind. Drake was holding his own mother at gunpoint. Verona rushed in as well, aiming her weapon at Clay.
You decide who you work for the law or for justice.
Fuck this. Bye, Mom.
A gunshot rang out. Drake was shot in the head. Clay smashed through the glass and jumped outside. Verona called out to him, but slowly lowered her gun. Clay had done what she could not do. Clay reached the shoreline, where his escape gear was already prepared. Perhaps this time, no one would ever find him again.